Alright guys, the time has finally come for me to give you a ranking of the best coasters I've been on, and this year I'm going all the way out to 100 coasters. This is going to be part 1 of 2. I'm going to do the thing where, you go 100 through 51 in the first video, and then I'm going to come out with another for the top 50, just because I really don't feel like sitting down and doing 100 coasters in this one video. But yeah, this is going to be a huge list. This year, I feel like I did a really good job of sort of remembering those older coasters, like not in terms of age, but the ones I haven't ridden in 7-8 years. Like there are definitely some that I haven't ridden since like 2018 or whatever that I've sort of forgotten, but I can definitely recall how good they are. And I hope I gave them a decent spot on the list. Obviously, it's tough to tell with those kinds of coasters. I need to re-ride them, but I hope I did a good job representing them. And then, of course, I have a lot of weird opinions, so definitely bear with me for that. Last thing I want to say is I currently have 340 credits. Hopefully I'll get a lot more this next coming year when I'm out of high school and I'm on my own and stuff. But with that being said, let's get right into the list. Coming in at number 100 is Flight of Fear at Kings Island. The Kings Dominion one is right behind it, but the Kings Island one actually had the pre-show working for me, so that's why it's ahead. The pre-show is really cool. And the actual layout's really intense. It's definitely underrated. I do think it's slightly more intense than Joker's Jinx, which I know is unpopular, but I definitely enjoyed this a bit more. It's got a good launch, and that first half is really intense on the Flight of Fear versions. The second half's also pretty intense. Coming in at 99 is the first defunct coaster on this list, and that is Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. This coaster was weird. There's another ride way higher on the list that I feel like is pretty similar, but is a lot stronger. This ride has bizarre pacing, but also pretty decent elements. You get decent whip, or at least you got decent whip on the non-inverting loop, and there was some decent airtime pops here and there, but it's nothing like the other coaster that I think is pretty similar to this later on the list. Coming in at number 98 is Batman the Ride at Great Adventure, which means 97 is Batman at Magic Mountain, and 96 is Batman at Over Georgia. These all feel pretty similar to me. The Over Georgia one feels like it runs slightly faster, but not enough to really separate it. These have great intensity. I mean, the positives on this ride are really good. You get great whip on the 0G roll and corkscrews. It's a fun ride, but it's pretty much the most basic invert you can get. Coming in at number 95 is Afterburn. This ride's really carried by the corkscrew at the end. I think the rest of it is honestly one of the weakest inverts, but that corkscrew is very violent, very snappy. The rest of it honestly feels kind of flowy, which is weird because a lot of people say this is one of the most aggressive inverts, but I personally didn't find it to be that, but it's still a really fun ride, obviously. Coming at 94 is Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. I wish I got more rides on this than just 2, because I really did enjoy this. A lot of the inversions besides the pretzel loop gave good laterals, and that's pretty good on a flyer. You also get that pretzel loop, which is extremely intense. It's not quite as intense as some people make it out to be, I feel like, but it's still a really good element, and of course, the setting's amazing on this. Plus, it has probably the best queue of any coaster in the world, so you gotta give it that. Coming in at 93 is Hagrid's. This ride's all about the theming. It has some intense moments, but I personally didn't find it to be too aggressive. There was a little airtime and laterals here and there, but the theming's what really makes it. Yeah, I'm not too big of a fan of the narration, but the actual sets and animatronics and everything themselves are really great. Coming in at 92 is Mindbuster at Canada's Wonderland. I honestly like the second half of this ride more. I know that's really weird. The first half has decent floater airtime. I know some people say it's ejector. I personally didn't find it to be ejector strength, but it's still fun. But then in the second half, you get that helix that just feels like death. It's really rough. And you get a violent lateral slam going into the helix if you're towards the front. You get pinned to the right of the train, and it is one of the better helixes out there, that's for sure. Coming in at 91 is Wildebeest in the same park. I had a tough time deciding between this and Wildebeest, but Wildebeest has a couple absolutely absurd moments. This is an extremely rough coaster, and that's why I love it. It has some really strange airtime that is really enhanced by the fact that you're just getting jackhammered throughout it. It also has some decent lateral moments. It's definitely not the most intense Woody out there, but it's still a really good ride. Coming at number 90 is Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is on here for one element, that's the Death Hill. If you're in the front row, you're going to get some absurd ejector airtime on this hill. I mean, it's probably the strongest airtime in the park besides El Toro, which is kind of crazy to say. The rest of it gives okay laterals and a scenic tour, but you really ride this for the ejector Death Hill. Coming in at 89 is Mystery Mine at Dollywood. This ride's definitely grown on me the past couple years. I didn't really like it too much in 2023, but 2024, I definitely had a great time on it. It's just pure fun. The theming's ridiculous, but I love it. And then it has some really wacky maneuvers in the first half that give laterals, and then the second half is really cool. The last few elements are very intense, and I think that combined with the theming makes this such a good ride. Coming in at number 88 is Great Bear at Hershey Park. This is pretty much the definition of a mid-tier invert for me, but that's not a bad thing. It's short, but it has a lot of very intense elements, especially the 0G roll. That's a very crunchy 0G roll there. Plus, it has an amazing setting, so it's definitely a solid ride. Coming in at 87 is Raptor at Cedar Point. I had a tough time between this and Great Bear. I feel like Great Bear might be slightly more aggressive, but Raptor's just that much longer. I had to give it the edge. The Cobra roll's great on it. The corkscrews are also very crunchy. And the final helix is very intense. Coming in at 86 is Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. I definitely didn't like this one quite as much as my version of Ride of Steel, but I mean, it's still a fun ride. You get weak ejector on that second camelback, and the rest of it's floater. You get decent positive Gs around the two helixes, and it feels like you can touch the tree on the first turn. Honestly, it's kind of sketchy. Overall, I don't like this ride quite as much, mainly because of the shin guards. And I also thought it ran slightly slower than Darian's version, but it's still fun. Coming in at 85 is Candemonium at Hershey Park. This is a very short B&M hyper. It is really short, especially since the last few elements are kind of duds in my opinion. You just get weak floater on that last camelback and then really no force around that turn. But everything up until then is great. The 5-second floater hill is really good. And the speed hill is weak ejector. It is actually ejector on a B&M. And of course, that little off-axis drop is pretty cool. Coming in at 84 is going to be Wild Eagle. This is personally my favorite B&M wing coaster of the only two I've done, shockingly. This and Gatekeeper are the only two, and I definitely prefer this. This thing has some amazing airtime on that first drop. It's flowjector, and it gives some actually pretty good butterflies. And then the positives on this ride are very underrated. It's definitely an intense coaster, and the terrain usage is also very good. Coming in at 82 is Georgia Scorcher. I've calmed down on my hype for this ride a little bit, but I still think it's definitely underrated. It has a lot of really good airtime moments, which is really weird in the standing position, and you also have some decent positive Gs here and there. Maybe not quite as intense as Riddler at Magic Mountain, but still pretty intense, and combined with that weird standing airtime, it's definitely an underrated coaster. Coming in at 81 is Big Bear Mountain. This is a pure fun family coaster. It's not super thrilling, but it's got some decent airtime and laterals here and there. The theming's amazing on it. The audio is spectacular. It's just a pure fun ride. Now, 81, 80, and 79 are all very similar. This is going to be Tempesto at 81, Tigris at 80, and Phobia at 79. They're all the typical Skyrocket 2s, but these are extremely underrated rides. You get great airtime and laterals on this thing. I mean, there's a strong moment of ejector for both riders in the front and the back. Different moments, but still equally as strong. And then the rest of the ride's pretty fun too. You get decent positives throughout it, laterals. It's an overall really good compact clone. Coming in at 78 is one of the rides I've ridden more than any other, and it's Ride of Steel at Darien Lake. I do have this a few spots higher than the America one, but I'm still not super high on it. When it's really running fast, it could be in my top 60, even top 50. When it's running slow, yeah, this thing crawls, which is unfortunate. I've experienced pretty much every version of the ride, so that's sort of how I get a good middle ground for this. It's got some decent airtime. It's got one moment of ejector if it's running fast, that being that second hill. A couple of the finale hills also give ejector if it's running really fast. And it's just an overall really weirdly paced ride. I know there's a couple other weirdly paced rides on this list that are way higher. I just don't think the elements on this one are strong enough to carry it over those. Coming in at 77 is Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I know that might be a hot take having it over Ride of Steel, but this thing's only got slightly weaker airtime in my opinion. It's got a decent first drop, a good turnaround, and then, of course, you got that sustained hill, which gives really sustained flowjector with an amazing sense of speed. And, of course, this ride is really good for positive Gs. I imagine it's definitely not as good as Titan for positives. I can't wait to get on that thing. I also haven't ridden this in 6 years, so I really want to get back on it, as well as the other Magic Mountain coasters, but from what I remember, it was a really good ride. Coming in at 76 is Thunder Striker at Carowinds. This one's probably the weakest of the three Cedar Fair B&M Hypers for me, and I feel like that's sort of a common opinion, but that doesn't mean it's a bad ride. It's still got a lot of really good sustained floater airtime. It is all floater on this one, there's no ejector pops, but it's smooth and the airtime's really sustained, so, it's your typical B&M Hyper. I know a lot of people would have it higher than I do. Coming in at 75 is Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. This one's definitely interesting. It's got a couple pretty strong ejector moments, those being the first drop and the hill towards the end of the ride there. Those are really strong. And then you've also got some strong positive Gs throughout the layout, especially in the Norwegian loop. This is a very funky, untraditional layout, but it's definitely great. Coming in at 74 is Banshee at Kings Island. I was thinking of having this one higher, but I decided against it because it's not the whippiest invert. In fact, it might be the least whippy invert, but that being said, it's probably a top 10 coaster. I don't know, it's definitely borderline top 10 for me for positive Gs. It is very good at that. That's basically all this ride does besides hang time at the end, but man, you are going to be pushed into your seat the entire ride. This ride's really good for leg numbing, so definitely get used to that. It's a fantastic experience, especially with the terrain usage. Coming in at 73 is Tatsu. I really want to put Banshee over this, but I just had to give it to Tatsu. This is another one I need to get back on from Magic Mountain. And for the most part, I think I like Banshee's layout more, but the pretzel loop is ginormous. It's extremely intense. One of the most intense moments in the world, pretty much. And some of the other inversions can give decent whips, so I decided to put it over Banshee. Plus, it also has amazing terrain usage. Coming in at 72 is New Mexico Rattler. This is definitely what I need to get back on, so we're sort of having a theme here in the 70s of coasters I need to re-ride, but New Mexico Rattler was definitely a good one. It had some great laterals like you'd expect from a CCI, also had some great airtime pops, just like you'd expect from a CCI. It's what you want from a CCI, but there's definitely some others that I have higher. But that just could be because I haven't ridden it since 2018. But definitely try to get out here if you can. Coming in at 71 is maybe the coaster I've ridden more than any other. I'm not quite sure at this point, but it's Whirlwind at Seabreeze. I've always loved this thing, especially these past few years. It is just absurd. The pop into the first trim brake is always going to give you ejector, no matter how you're facing. And the rest of the layout could either be a mild family coaster or an absolutely absurd thrill ride. It can give good lateral ejector moments on its best days. It can absolutely leave you disoriented from the spinning. It's a fantastic ride. Coming in at number 70 is Vortex at Canada's Wonderland. I was debating this or 69, but I had to go Vortex at 70 right now. It's definitely a short ride, but man, it's got some fantastic positives. And just like Banshee, that's really what this ride does best, is positives and pacing, because it has amazing pacing too. But yeah, you'll be pummeled with some extreme positives for basically the entire ride. Coming in at number 69 is Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. I kind of wanted to put Vortex over this. I know I put Vortex over it in my Canada's Wonderland ranking, and they are close, but I do think Leviathan has a good enough first half. The first half of Leviathan is really good. Great first drop. The turn after the first drop actually is pretty intense. You've got a good speed hill giving flowjector, and then a nice floaty sustained camelback, and then the ride kind of dies, I can't lie. It doesn't really do much after that except meander its way back to the brakes with one floater hill and a few lackluster turns, but I will say the first half definitely makes up for it. Coming in at 68 is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This ride's definitely interesting. It's got a lot of weird inconsistency issues. I know my early rides in 2025 were not very great at all, but I've also had some amazing rides on this thing, sort of similar to Ride of Steel. The Helix is always a gray out moment for me, and the transition into the mid-course is always an ejector moment for me, especially if I'm towards the front and on the right side of the train. That's great. And then the finale, if it's untrimmed and running fast, is going to be Flowjector on all of those hills. In the first half, yeah, I feel like it could be a bit stronger, but I don't care. The second half of this ride makes up for it. Coming in at 67 is going to be Matu at Busch Gardens Tampa. I unfortunately only got one ride on this. I really hope I can get another ride on it in a few months. But yeah, it was great from what I remember. This is my second highest ranked invert, and as you can tell, I'm not quite as big of a fan of B&M inverts as a lot of people. But this one's definitely got good positive Gs. Weirdly enough, the Batwing is one of the more underwhelming elements of the ride, which kind of surprised me because everyone said that was the best element ever. But I definitely thought it was fourth best element of the ride. The 0G roll and corkscrew are definitely the highlights for me. Those are very whippy, and it's also got some amazing theming throughout. Coming in at 66 is going to be Oscar's Wacky Taxi at Sesame Place. This ride's so silly. It's got such a fun theme, and then of course you got Oscar on the front of the train. That's hilarious. And then the ride itself packs a real punch. You get some fantastic Flowjector to ejector airtime on all of these hills. It's extremely fast paced. Yeah, it's just a fantastic ride overall. Coming in at 65 is going to be Comet at Hershey Park. This ride, if you get some room with the PTCs, is amazing. In the back row, you're going to get great ejector on a few of these drops. It does slow down a bit in the second half, but I don't really care. This ride is definitely an underrated one. It's one I've always defended, and is definitely in my top 100. Coming in at 64 is Thunderbolt at Kennywood. This ride's really made by both the Helix and that pop into the lift hill. If you're towards the front, going into that pop into the lift hill is fantastic. It's a great ejector moment. And then all throughout the Helix, you get random pops of Flowjector, along with great laterals. And there's some other good airtime moments throughout the ride, plus great terrain usage like a lot of rides on this list. It's an overall great wooden coaster. Now, coming in at 63 is Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. This is one that I definitely had a lot lower until recently, and I didn't even re-ride it. I just realized I need to give it a more fair chance because I was pretty mad at some other stuff that was going on when I rode it. I was mad at the ops, I was mad at other things on my phone, so I didn't really appreciate it like I should have, but looking back on it, it had some great ejector pops all throughout the ride, in the first half and the second. Good laterals. I mean, with those Premier restraints, you get a lot of room. I've been a big fan of the Premier restraints, so that's great to see on this. Yeah, I bet if I get a fresh set of eyes on this, it'll be a lot higher in my rankings than I even put it this year, but for now I feel like 63 is a fair spot. Coming in at 62 is Diamondback at Kings Island. This ride's just overall solid. It's pretty much the definition of a good middle-of-the-road, upper-middle-tier B&M hyper. It's got great floater hills, very sustained. Not really any ejector, but that's fine. It's got a nice spectacle to end the ride with the splashdown. It's overall a solid ride. I can't complain too much. Coming in at 61 is going to be Gemini Blue, and 60 is going to be Gemini Red. Just like last year, I have to defend these rides again. They are so good. You get such strong ejector on a lot of these hills, and especially if you get room, which you can easily get with these aero trains. Man, that first drop in particular is my new favorite part of the ride. Yeah, you get great sustained ejector on that. You also got that phenomenal dueling interaction. Coming in at 59 is going to be Steel Force at Dorney Park. I definitely don't have this as high as I used to. I've realized that there's a lot of smaller rides that are better than this, but this is definitely sort of in that Gemini tier, but just a better sense of speed. The second half is really strong. You get strong Flowjector to weak ejector on all of those hills. It's really consistent. And then in the first half, you don't get too strong of airtime, but you have a really good sense of speed throughout this thing. It's definitely a solid ride, but there's definitely some hypercoasters that are better. Coming in at 58 is going to be Flash Vertical Velocity at Six Flags Great Adventure. I bet if I rode this when it was fully warmed up, like in July and August, it would be a bit higher on my list, but I rode it in April and May, so pretty early on in its life, I would say. Yeah, this ride's still great. It's just a jack of all trades. It does literally anything you can want in a coaster, It doesn't do anything great, but it does pretty much everything, which is really why it's this high. Coming in at 57 is the original Top Thrill Dragster. I only rode this in 2016, so my memory's really foggy on this one, but it was definitely good. You get that intense hydraulic launch to start the ride. That's my number 3 launch I ever experienced, which is insane to say because, it's a 120 mile an hour launch, even though it wasn't really 120, but you know what I mean. And then I remember the top hat giving flowjector with some decent laterals. Obviously, nothing like Top Thrill 2 dishes out, which we'll get to in next video. But yeah, it was still good. And then the ride just ended, which is a shame. But, it was still a fantastic ride for what it was. Coming in at 56 is going to be Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. This thing's another just really consistently good B&M hyper throughout the layout. The second half is a little weaker, but you still get a nice off-axis airtime moment in there, so it makes up for it. And then the first half, you got that iconic 5-second floater hill, which is really more like flowjector. It's really strong. The first drop is strong, and then of course you get that ejector speed hill, which is the one moment of ejector on the ride, and it's great. Coming in at 55 is going to be Wild One at Six Flags America. This one's definitely sad to see go, especially since I only got one ride on it in 2016 and one ride in 2025, unlike most of the other Six Flags America coasters. Yeah, it's definitely tough to let this one go because it's such a classic, and it did have some great airtime. It had a really strong lateral ejector hill right after the double down, which was great, and then some other good airtime moments. Some decent laterals on the finale helix, not quite as strong as some people said, but still strong. It's overall a pretty fairly rated ride because I think a lot of people really like this one, and it's tough to see it go. Coming in at 54 is going to be Blue Streak at Cedar Point. This one's grown on me this year. Now that I've been shown by my friends how good this ride really is, especially in the back row, yeah, it's definitely got to be up here in my rankings. It's such a well-paced wooden coaster, and especially one from 1964. All of these hills, well, not all of them, most of them give ejector, and pretty strong ejector in a couple of these cases. One of the hills towards the end also gives laterals, which is amazing. It's overall a really solid wooden coaster. Coming in at 53 is going to be Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This one's got a lot of highlight elements without much depth to it, which is very similar to another Premier Rides coaster you're going to see in the next video. But I feel like this one's also a bit weaker. I don't know, maybe that's just because I haven't ridden it in over 6 years, we'll see. But yeah, from what I remember, the last drop before the brake run was really strong. You got good ejector on that. Unfortunately, killed by some trims, but whatever, you got to deal with it. The launch was powerful, the loop gave insane hang time, and there were some other good lateral positives, airtime moments, all of that. It's good at pretty much everything, which is part of why it's so high for me. Coming in at 52 is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is my lowest ranked RMC, which, shows how good RMC is because it's at 52 out of 340 coasters. But I was definitely a little underwhelmed with this. The first drop is definitely the highlight of the ride. You get a lateral kink combined with a strong ejector pop. But then the rest of the ride felt a little weaker than any of the RMC coasters I've been on before. Even compared to Jersey Devil, this one definitely felt like it was giving flowjector towards the end. And it also had some more ejector moments, but they were weaker ejector. I don't know, maybe I just caught it on a bad day, but it was a hot summer day in July, so I don't really think that was the case. I just think I was a little let down by it. And finally, coming in at 51 is Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. I was debating between this and Twisted Cyclone, but I had to go with Jersey Devil. I think the first drop is honestly equally as strong. You don't have the lateral kink, but it is very violent ejector in the back. And then the first half is really good on this. You've got a good sustained ejector hill, a good stall with decent whip, and then in the second half you got some decent flowjector moments, sort of like Twisted Cyclone has, which is why they're similar in my rankings. Great first halves, but sort of weak second halves compared to other RMCs, but it's still a fantastic ride and just missed my top 50. So that is my number 100 through 51. Let me know what you guys thought of this video down in the comments below. Make sure to stay tuned for part 2, which is going to be the big one, 50 through 1. It's definitely going to be a tight race in there, and we'll see what it ends up being. But for now, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.